Hi everyone and welcome to Can You Keep Up? This is our first episode of the semester because I've been working on a campaign for Judge Bob Vance, who's running for Chief Justice of the Alabama Supreme Court. So this episode we're going to talk about the upcoming midterm elections that take place next week. So in this episode we're going to give you a rundown of the candidates and the history of voting here in America. Through the Constitution and state laws, all U.S. citizens over the age of 18 have the right to vote. Although we have the right to vote, that does not mean that there is not voter intimidation and things of that nature that try to prevent some of us from voting. So let's do a little history check. In 1865, black men were granted the right to vote. But in many states, they tried to stop the voting by instilling black codes, intimidation, literacy tests, and things of that nature. So but black men would not get the right to vote along with black women until 1965. Prior to the Voting Rights Act of 1965, only 23% of eligible black voters were registered to vote. After 1969, that number increased to 61%. And let's not forget, here in Alabama, just last year, 98% of black women voted to elect our current Senator, Doug Jones. On the Alabama ballot, we have 4 amendments and 1 local amendment for Jefferson County that will be on the ballot. Amendment number 1 would authorize the display of the 10 Commandments on government property, including public schools. Amendment number 2 would declare that the state of Alabama must recognize and support the rights of unborn children. Amendment number 3 would remove the state superintendent from the board, establish districts for membership, and eliminate the 70-year age cap for board members, and this is at the University of Alabama. Amendment number 4 would allow a vacated seat in the Alabama House or Senate to stay empty until the next general election. If the vacancy occurs on or after October 1st in the 3rd year of a term. All right, so I'm going to give you all a list of the top of the ballot candidates in the statewide races here in Alabama. So let's start with governor. We have Walt Maddox, who's a Democrat, running against our current governor, Kay Ivey, who's a Republican. For the attorney general race, we have Joseph Siegelman, who's a Democrat, running against Steve Marshall, who is a Republican. We have the chief justice race, who is Judge Bob Vance versus Tom Parker. We have lieutenant governor candidates Will Boyd, who's a Democrat, going against Will Ainsworth, who is the Republican. For the Secretary of State race, we have Heather Milam, who is a Democratic candidate, running against current Secretary of State John Merrill. And we also have the state auditor race, and we have Miranda Joseph, who is running as the Democrat, against Jim Ziegler, who is the Republican nominee. Although this election is not statewide, it has gained a lot of attention here in Jefferson County. We have Danny Carr, who is a Democratic nominee, running against Mike Anderton for the district attorney's office. All right, let's dive into some elections that are not located here in Alabama but are still, in the U.S. So some elections that I've been watching personally are Stacey Abrams versus Brian Kemp. Brian Kemp is the current Secretary of State for the state of Georgia, and he's been facing a lot of backlash for the purging of voters. So he has a exact match program that he started as Secretary of State, where if you have something as small as leaving out your middle name, that they can purge you from the voting rolls. And I believe it to be around 35,000 voters that were purged, and 70% of them being black. So there's been a lot of attention on that. And then we have Beto O'Rourke in Texas, who is running against Ted Cruz. Now, Ted Cruz is the Republican candidate and has been in his seat for a while. Ted Cruz is getting a lot of support from Donald Trump, but during the 2016 election cycle, they didn't care for each other. I mean, Donald even called him Lion Ted. So with this, I feel like we see that the Republicans are really scrambling, and they're trying their best to seem as though they are a united front, because they really have a chance of being uprooted from most of their positions. So hopefully a blue wave is coming. Please get out and vote next Tuesday, November 6th, and I hope that this coverage has given you a little insight on what's going to happen and what's going on next week. In the description box below, we'll have some of the candidates' commercials. We'll have a link where you can see who's running and a little detail on their backgrounds and what they stand for. and a sample ballot so you can see ahead of time what your ballot will look like come next week. Thanks for tuning in to our special election coverage of the 2018 midterm.